The invitation came in the mail, and I couldn't believe my good fortune. A lifetime of adventure for an urban explorer like me. The ultimate urban descent hunt sounded incredible. With its broken windows, wall covered in graffiti, and eerie silence, the deserted city served as a playground for those who were curious and daring. I set out by myself with a list of things in my hand and my camera slung over my shoulder. The long shadows that were being cast by the sun as it was already sitting behind the buildings gave the impression that they were grabbing at me. I chuckled apprehensively while telling myself that worse had happened during my explorations. The list's first few items, a torn page from an old book, a rusted key, and a broken mirror, were simple enough. However, things started to feel as I walked farther into the center of the city. I had visited many abandoned locations, but this was unique. Every sound, including the creaking of the floorboards, seemed amplified in the gloomy atmosphere. The next item was supposed to be the picture of a street sign, but every time I found one, the letters seemed to blur and rearrange themselves into strange words that gave me the chills. Then I noticed it, a photograph of me taken from behind. There was nobody there when I turned around, with my heart racing. I kept convincing myself that it was all a joke, and that I was just letting my imagination run wild. The notes began to appear, however, and I was led deeper into the city's center by their cryptic messages scrawled on walls. One said, "Run while you can." Another said, "He's watching." I picked up the pace in an effort to get rid of the sense of being on the prowl, but the city led me down twisting lanes and fruitless streets, as if it had a mind of its own. Every step seemed to be a trap, and every shadowy potential danger. A reminder of the devious game I had put myself in was the weight of my camera in my hands. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, like air brushing against my ear. With my heart racing, I looked around, but no one was there. I ought to have turned around and fled from this nightmare, but a sick curiosity kept me going. As night fell deeper into the city, it seemed to come to life. In the background, footsteps could be heard. There were moving shadows on the walls. I stumbled into a room filled to the brim with horrifying pictures of bloody battles, agonizing wounds, and terrifying situations. I felt a shiver run down my spine when I realized I wasn't the only one who had played this evil game. As I gathered more things, I felt more and more like I was being watched. I was aware that I was being herded and controlled, but I had no way of fighting back. My location was revealed by the final hint, which led me to the center of the city's ruins, which exuded an otherworldly energy. As I walked into the room, my camera's flash was illuminating the strange symbol-covered walls, and I forced myself to hold my breath. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, a twisted silhouette that seemed to flicker and move. I was startled by the icy terror of a voice that seemed to erupt from all directions at once. It merely said, "Congratulations," in a venomous tone. "You performed well in your role, I must say." It then leaped after that. My camera dropped to the ground as I ran, and the city itself seemed to warp and twist all around me. I felt it at my heels and on my neck where it was breathing. The exit seemed so close despite being so far away. As I ran from the crumbling city and into the chilly night air, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I hadn't won the game, that it was still very much in progress. I never imagined myself in a circumstance like this. It all began with a rumor about treasure being buried deep in the abandoned mine that had once given life to our dying town. When you're facing eviction and have nowhere else to run, the allure of wealth becomes a strong temptation. Desperation has a strange way of changing people. The flashlights in our trembling hands as the five of us stood at the mine's entrance flickered. Despite the warm summer air outside, the darkness inside was oppressive, and I could feel a chill running down my spine. Joey, who was always upbeat, cracked a tense joke to ease attention. We laughed, but it didn't ease a tension that pervaded the room. The walls seemed to close in on us as we walked further, and the echoes of the pickaxes from the mine's glory days played tricks on our minds. We would occasionally hear hushed whispers telling us to keep moving, like voices carried by the wind. None of us actually believed in ghosts or spirits, so who were we kidding? At least not until we came across a eerily untouched by time old mining equipment. The shadows appeared to dance and play tricks on us more as we descended. Like smoke curling around our thoughts, doubts started to infiltrate them. Mike blamed Joey, saying he was only out for himself, while Sarah charged him with concealing a hidden agenda. Although I made an effort to mediate, the paranoia in our already tense group spread like wildfire. We believed that the treasure was within our grasp, but as we descended further, the walls seemed to close in around us more tightly, as if the mine itself wanted to keep us out. The flashlight started to flicker, and its weak beam started to cast long, crooked shadows on the walls. I caught a glimpse of something moving at the very edge of my field of vision at that point. My heart was racing as I turned, but nothing was there. When Joey suddenly screamed, pointing at the shadows behind us, our group was at its breaking point. The only thing we could see when we swung our flashlights in that direction were deserted tunnels. As Joey claimed to have seen a figure, possibly the ghost of a miner, his voice trembled and his eyes were wide with fear. Mike rolled his eyes and said it was probably just nerves, but I couldn't help but feel uneasy. The air became heavier as we continued, and an ominous smell that smelled like rust and decay persisted. The walls were covered in old, faded markings that I can only guess at when I shone my flashlight on them. Over the sounds of our labored breaths, Joey murmured something about a curse. Then, out of nowhere, my flashlight stopped working, leaving us in the dark. As we scrambled for extra batteries in the midst of our panic, something cold and imperceptible touched my arm. A cacophony of voices that appeared to be coming from all sides increased the volume of the whispers. Then, in the pitch blackness, I sensed a presence, a chilling breath against my cheek. That night, as we fled the mine, our cries resounded throughout the tunnels as we limped aimlessly towards freedom. The mine had altered us, leaving psychological scars and a chasm in our friendship that would never mend. I can't help but feel that we left with more than just haunted memories, something that will haunt us forever, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered once more. What did we find down there? Was it the treasure we sought, or something far more sinister? I didn't realize how much of a puzzle-solving prodigy I was until I came across the most difficult scavenger hunt I had ever encountered. Despite the town's apparent calm, there was a tapestry of mysteries beneath its serene surface. The initial spark for the entire event was a straightforward postcard posted to the community bulletin board. Accepting the invitation to take part in the historical cold case quest sounded like a fun diversion. I had no idea that it would lead me through a perplexing maze of unknowables. We began the journey by visiting the archives of the neighborhood library. As I combed through the old newspapers in search of details regarding a string of unsolved disappearances that had troubled the town decades earlier, hours quickly turned into days. The more I read, the more it became obvious that these weren't isolated incidents. The story's main threads started to form as it related to the unsolved crimes to an intricate web of police corruption. I gathered information from longtime residents who were still troubled by those tense times in quiet restaurants and dimly lit coffee shops as I searched for leads. Their low voices and sly looks hinted at a persistent anxiety, a reminder that the town still held secrets it wasn't ready to reveal. Every conversation brought me closer to the mystery's core, while also making me a target for those who wanted to conceal the truth. I kept looking, and the pieces began to come together. I discovered a trail of proof that suggested a complicated cover-up. In police records, names were hidden and significant files went missing for no apparent reason. As I applied more pressure, I encountered resistance that grew. When I was looking through an attic full of memories, I once came across a picture that gave me the chills. A group of people, including well-known locals, were gathered around a table that was covered in cash in the image. The picture hinted at a bigger conspiracy that went beyond the unsolved cases that penetrated the very fabric of the neighborhood. But my unwavering resolve had consequences. Strangers broke into my apartment, left menacing notes on my door, and snuck around the place. As I raced against time to uncover the truth before those determined to keep it a secret silenced me permanently, I could feel the walls surrounding me closing in. I discovered the final clue in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the town. The atmosphere was tense when I entered. Carrying only the information I had learned, the room was eerily unsettling as shadows danced on the walls. I heard footsteps coming in the darkness. Before I could process what was happening, I whirled around to see someone I didn't recognize as my heart began to race. The voice that broke the silence was instructive rather than hostile. The appearance of a brand new puzzle piece instantly changed everything I thought I knew. The person in front of me wasn't an adversary. Rather, they were a fellow truth seeker who was equally committed to locating the town's untold stories. With our alliance, the puzzle grew even more difficult. We realized that the cold cases were only a small component of a much larger mystery involving families, wealth, and power. We managed to work together, which gave us reason for hope, but it also left us perilously perched on a cliff with no idea what lay beyond. Despite the fact that doing so would require us to confront the very center of a plot that threatened to annihilate us both, we were united in our determination to reveal the darkness that had long pervaded the town.